I hope you everyone is safe and doing great during this quarantine. And kudos to the previous three speakers who did very well and added more pressure on me because my slides are not as good as their slides. But they are like good enough uh, to give some data. That's it. So, yeah, we'll be discussing about Webpack internals and plugin architecture system. So, we have been using Webpack for a while, and this talk is not just for the people who are using React or Vue or something. This is for everyone who is into front end. So, before jumping into it, let's see a bit about myself. Like, yeah, I love JavaScript and coffee. When I say coffee, it's not script, it's just a hot coffee. That's it. And I work as a lead software engineer at Moengage. And yeah, I'm a tech speaker. I speak in meetups and conferences, and I'm an open source contributor as well, contributing to a couple of projects. You can follow me in Twitter, or you can view my projects in GitHub to get the updated things. Okay, so yeah, what do we discuss about Webpack? I noted out like six things how to set up. Like people usually have these questions, like how do we set up a Webpack, and what's the difference in Webpack like versions 4, 5? What is Webpack 5 module federation? In the recent times, this has been like a buzzword. People ask me what is like difference between Webpack parcel and gulp, grunt, and what should we do and what should we not do in the Webpack config. So yeah, these are the six topics which we will not discuss about. Yeah, I might sound crazy, but today's discussion will not be on any of these topics. It will be purely on Webpack, how Webpack works. So now, after giving those six topics and saying I won't discuss about these topics, then the first thing that come to your mind is like, yeah, I'm crazy. Let's see what we got to discuss. Yeah, so when I say like there's nothing to discuss, right? Because I've already covered the six topics, which are the usual topics, and I'm telling we are not going to discuss that. Then what are we going to discuss? Okay, so yeah, we'll just discuss the internals of Webpack and how actually Webpack works rather than how to set up a Webpack, because I think there are a couple of good examples and talks which do that already. So yeah, these are some of the things which we usually use in code like ESX, React, JSX, like Emotion, Sass, Angular, a lot of things. We use Vue and all. I didn't add too many things, but yeah. So these are few things which we code. These help us in making our code much easier and it's more developer friendly, right? But what happens if you build a project on this, you build a very complex project on this, and you try to run it on the browser? Usually, right, like browser doesn't understand React, browser doesn't understand Angular, browser like understands only this pretty minified bundle. That's it. It doesn't understand anything else. It understands simple JS, HTML, and CSS. Yeah, so whenever you pass these frameworks to a browser, right, it will obviously like react like this, like what the hell is wrong with you? Like, why are you even giving me this? It expects you to just give a very simple kind of bundle like this. Like it expects you to give a minified JS files instead of giving you these things. Yeah, so now the question comes like, yeah, we are using a lot of frameworks, we are using a lot of things. Then how do we resolve this complexity and how do we make our code compatible to the browser? So the solution for this is Webpack. I don't say this is the only solution. There are a lot of solutions for this. You can use Parcel, Gulp, Grunt. You can write your own module bundler as well if you're good at like data structures and tree parsing. Then you can build your own dependency graph as well. So yeah, let's look into the Webpack because this is like a package which is used by a lot of people. So I thought like it would be great if we can dig deeper into Webpack. So what usually Webpack does, when I say Webpack, right, everyone might have used like they just give some entry files and they pass it through Webpack and the output is a minified bundle. So are you guys following me? Because I think, okay. So it takes a set of files, it bundles it and gives you a minified bundle min.js, and it also gives you a map files. So you can map, you get a map to the bundle. So this is a general overview of Webpack, which actually works, how it works. So what we have discussed in Webpack so far is Webpack is a module bundler, as we know, and Webpack generates chunks, as we know. So how it bundles the code and generate chunk is it creates a dependency graph and resolves it. So this is a very general overview of what we have been seeing throughout the years, right? Like how Webpack work and what actually Webpack does. Yeah, but what I feel is this is not all about Webpack that we should know. Like there's a lot of things happening behind the scenes which we should be knowing about, rather than just knowing Webpack as a module bundler and like a chunk provider. So let's see how actually Webpack works in these scenarios. Just say you have a like set of files. You have JS, TS, JSX, and you have a lot of files, right? CSS and all. So you give a file with index.js as entry, or you can give as a HTML file as entry. You can give multiple entry points. But to keep things simple, I'll take a single JS file as the entry point. Then what we do is we send this entry point to Webpack. Now, what Webpack does is it creates a dependency graph, like what all dependencies is your code using. It can be a npm module or it can be a different file as well. If you see, my index.js is dependent on the my component, like it's a component, and it's also dependent on React. It's also dependent on Lodash. So it creates a dependency graph so that it can find out what all things it requires to bundle, rather than bundling everything, right? Because at the end of the day, optimizations comes to the play. Then what happens is Webpack creates something called a abstract syntax tree from the dependency graph. Like abstract, we'll discuss about what is abstract syntax tree in detail in the coming slides. So Webpack creates a AST so that it has all the code together with it, and it's already linking the code which is required. And finally, it generates bundles, a series of bundles. Like this is a simple image of a Webpack bundle analyzer, which shows you like what all are the chunk sizes and what are the sizes of the bundles are. So this is a very general overview, like how Webpack works. Again, if you go right, it takes an entry point, it creates a dependency graph, like it uh, again it creates a abstract syntax tree of the complete dependency graph, and then it generates bundles. So it's very simple, right? So when I say Webpack, like everyone might have used Webpack plugins. It's like everyone uses like a lot of plugins, right? We have plugin for every simple thing that we can do, for progress, for loader, for loading screens, and we have plugins for generating HTML Webpack plugin. We have plugin again to inject a root into that HTML. We have a lot of plugins. So Webpack, what I feel is it's all about plugins and resolvers. So if you see this, we have a set of loaders and plugins which are like most commonly used. Few might be deprecated and few might be there. Where the context of this talk would be more of how Webpack works rather than what things are deprecated from Webpack V2 to V5 or V4. So let's see a general overview how actually Webpack works. So if you see, these are some set of plugins to minify the JS code, to create HTML, to split your code, and you have few loaders, transpile ES6 to ES5 or ES7 to ES5, and you have image loaders, URL loaders, file loaders, and a lot, right? You have style loaders, CSS loaders, you have loaders for everything. So what in general these loaders do is they take these set of files which usually write a test, like you usually do, take this specific file with this specific extension, load it in the form of a JS module. Because what Webpack understands is it at the end of the day it gives you a set of JS modules, right? So Webpack represents it would become some modules. So that's the reason you load other format files with a loader, and loaders work is to create JS modules. Yeah, now can anyone, whoever has worked on like Tap Pebble or heard about it earlier, anyone can unmute their mic and just say like what is Tap Pebble, if anyone has worked on it. Okay. Or you can actually raise your hand as well. It will be fine. Okay. So Tappable is actually, when I say Webpack is Webpack consists of plugins and loaders, right? So Webpack gives you flexibility to add any kind of plugin that you want. Like Webpack allows you to add plugin for any purpose. So Tappable is a library. It's a very 200 lines or 230 lines of library, which gives you a plugin system in Webpack. It gives you a plugin support in Webpack where you can directly write plugins on top of Webpack. If you want to do anything, right? When I said like HTML Webpack plugin, it is used to generate HTML from a template. So you're giving that support to Webpack through this plugin. These are very similar to event emitters in Node. If someone has worked on like Node.js, right? We have event emitters in Node. So you can listen on to any event and you can pass a callback saying whenever this event is emitted, do this. So this is how actually Tappable works in case of Webpack. So Tappable has a lot of instances, but I would actually concentrate on these instances which are very specific to Webpack. Like you have around these six instances. Like you have compiler, compilation, resolver, module factories, parser, templates, and yeah. So you have uh, these important Tappable instances in Webpack. We'll go deeper into them, like what they actually do one by one, and then we can actually. Okay, compiler is actually where your Webpack starts your like compilation or bundle generation. Compiler is a starting point. So what actually compiler does is it takes the config for the Webpack to run. So without a Webpack config, you can't actually start any Webpack, right? So compiler is whenever you import this. If you see here, whenever you import a Webpack config, it creates a compiler instance. So this gives you the flexibility to start the Webpack build or the dev. So compiler is just it's an instance, it's a tappable instance which allows you to start the compilation process. So the second one in the list was compilation. Okay, don't mind about the dependency graph, which looks very complex. Even I didn't understand what is that about. I just got a random image from Google, but it has something a source client main.js, so I felt it's very informative. So compilation, as I was telling, Webpack before bundling things, right? It actually traverses through the files and creates a dependency graph. Because without the dependency graph, it wouldn't be able to know what all are the files used and what are the files which are unused. If you might have seen, right? Webpack usually we say there's a concept called tree shaking. So tree shaking is something like if you have any unused bundles, right? Unused files, Webpack doesn't like include them in the bundles. Webpack just compiles and bundles only the used files. So this is the work of a dependency graph. Dependency graph does this work of just including all the used files in the graph. And this is a example of how a dependency graph looks. It's pretty complex, but it's fine. Like this is how actually a dependency graph looks. Okay, so once compilation has like created a dependency graph, right? But from a Webpack, in order to process the dependency graph, based on this information, I don't think it's enough for the Webpack, like what files are located where. So there is something called a resolver as a tappable instance, and this is what this resolver does is it provides a meta to every node in the dependency graph, like to every file, like where the file is located, what's the name of the file, what's the size of the file, and what is the absolute path of the file. So without this meta, it's very difficult for the Webpack to load the files and to create the bundles. So the resolver does this work of loading the files. It locates the files. It tells if the file is existing or not. If it is not existing, your Webpack throws an error. But if it is existing, your Webpack continues with the dependency graph resolver. So this is a resolver, and in Webpack, there's a in the Webpack code, right? If you go into the repository, there is something called as resolver factory.js. Again, this has like a set of tappable instances where actually you can like add any plugin on top of resolver factory. So you can Webpack gives you flexibility to add plugins on every stages. It's not just on the build start and build end. We'll see how to build a plugin as well in the later stages. Okay, so module factories. What these module factories do is Webpack loads everything, as I was telling, right? Webpack loads everything in the form of modules, even though it is a JS file or a CSS file or HTML, everything. So that's the reason you're using loaders, right? If you use a JSX, you use a Babel loader. So it needs modules for everything. So these module factories take care of generating these modules after the files are resolved. So what the resolver does is it gives the meta regarding the files, and the module factories use this meta, they locate the file, and they create a module out of it. So you see a lot of modules. If you see any bundle analyzer, right? You see a chunk and you see a lot of modules in that. So module factories work is something similar to that. Okay. So next comes is the parser. Parser is like, yeah, I was telling about abstract syntax tree, right? Now it has created modules and it has also read the dependency tree. But now the Webpack has a set of strings, so it can't understand the strings directly. So it needs a parser to understand them. So Webpack converts, this parser converts those modules into abstract syntax tree. So if you see how an abstract syntax tree look like, uh, function demo and console log hello react.js meetup. Okay. So if you see this, this is how your actually AST looks like. I've used the Babel parser to create a AST. You can actually use a AST generator as well. I was working on some other AST project. So this is how your AST actually looks like. You have a start and so it converts everything. It reads this complete thing into the string, and it tells you this is where your code starts and this is where your code ends. So initially it reads a type file, and then in type program you can see what your body consists of. Like it's a function declaration. It starts at 0 and ends at string character 60. And if you see the location of this function declaration is line 1. So it has a lot of things like type block statement, type identifiers, type function declaration, type expression statement, this one. And we are calling this console log as a function, right? It has a call expression, it has member expression. So it has a lot of things. So Webpack does this work. It creates a dependency graph for that. Sorry, AST. And now we have a set of data which is actually parsed. So Webpack can read this and tell at what line what was there, right? So it has everything to create the bundles. It has a dependency tree, it resolved it, it validated the dependency graph, now it located it, and now it created a modules, and after that it created a AST. So when it has a AST, it can just read the JSON and create bundles out of it. And finally, templates, right? You have something called templates. Like everyone might have at some point of time might have used templates in Angular, React, or some of the other places. So what templates usually do is they bind your data to a specific view. So here also Webpack has a thing called templates. So you have something, you have got the data already from the parser in the form of AST. So now you need to fill this data in the form of chunks or modules into templates. So templates take care of this. There are a lot of templates, but most important templates which I feel are like these three: module template, chunk template, and a dependency template. So module template takes care of creating a module or a bundle, and chunks are like you have when you do chunking in your project, right? You create a lot of sub bundles in the form of chunks. So your chunk template takes care of that, and similarly a dependency template. So templates takes care of creating the bundles from the generated AST actually. So if you see the whole process into a form of flow chart, right, which makes very easy because I've been talking for around 15-20 minutes and half of the things might have flown away. So I can actually sum up the whole thing in the form of a flow chart where it tells like Webpack starts the compilation through a compiler, and compiler gives you a compilation instance. And after compilation, it actually creates a dependency graph, and that is being resolved. And what are the non-JS files are being loaded by the loaders, and they are again converted to JS modules, and they get resolved. And after that, we have a module factory which creates the modules, and then we parse things into AST through a parser, and then we load the parsed AST into chunk templates or other templates, and then finally we create a bundle file. That's it. The simple process is a very simple process. So yeah, it's very simple, right? So the most of the times when I talk about Webpack internals and all, I get this common question from everyone, like, hey, listen, I build just UI and front end. I should be more focusing on optimizations of React or like any other framework. Why should I like know about this? Is there any need? I feel like, yeah, when we are working on Webpack, right? Yeah, definitely it would be required, because it's knowing about all these, it would help you to debug your Webpack more, and you can plug into any instance and you can optimize it more further. So I would suggest this is a great learning if you want to dive deeper into module bundling and packaging. So yeah, if you have any questions regarding the concepts, we can take it, or I can show some plugins. I can write some basic plugins, and then we can take up the questions regarding that. Anything is fine. So shall we move forward with the
Y-
plugins?
yes.
Okay. So was I clear so far? Because
Yes. Yes.
okay. So okay, nice. So for this, I'll be using a simple boilerplate which I've created in the recent times, because I don't want to set up the Webpack and all again. So I'll start with cloning this boilerplate, and we will get started with that. Okay. So if you see, I have something called as config, and I have something called as Webpack prod, which is for production, Webpack dev, and I have a Webpack base config. It's a very usual Webpack config, which I see everywhere, right? So, okay. So let's create a plugins folder in Webpack, and I will create a simple plugin.js. So I would write, what I would do is I will, as I was talking about tappable instances, I'll create a class for my plugin, and I will try to start the compiler and pass a compilation instance through that. So for that, I would need a class simple Webpack plugin. And whenever Webpack loads this, right, it calls this apply. Apply gives you the compiler instance. Okay. And let module dot exports equal to simple Webpack plugin. And to make my uh, okay, I would like to install it. Let that be installed. So yeah, whenever I say like tappable instances, right? First question comes is, how do I tap those instances? So Webpack gives you a set of hooks, they're not React hooks actually. Hooks, these hooks are completely different. With the introduction of Webpack 4, you had hooks, but before Webpack 4, there was something straightforward tappable instances. So Webpack hooks gives allows you to write a plugin uh, at every step. Like you have something called done hook, you have after emit hook. Like once the compilation is done and bundles are like copied to the build folder, the after emit hook gets called. So whenever you see the Webpack documentation, right, I can actually. Uh, if you see these compiler hooks, right? Webpack has a set of compiler hooks, and you will get all these. Like once you get the entry option, this hooks get called. Once you get enter the plugins option, this hook gets called. Similarly, you have a lot of things. So for the demo purpose, we will just use the done hook. Done hook is something when the compilation has been completed. If you want to do something like you want to build a post build plugin, so let's build a very simple post build plugin. Now I have the compiler instance. What I would do is, before doing that, I would also add chalk.js so that my terminal looks more cleaner and colorful. So what I'll do is compiler dot hooks. Now I will just do a done dot tap. What I'll do is I'll write the name of my plugin, which is simple webpack plugin, or you can name anything. So once that is done, you have stats. What is the stats? So we'll look into stats as well. So chalk dot green and build successful. Okay. What I'll do is I'll just use it as similar to other plugins. Just say a simple webpack plugin requires plugin simple plugin, and I'll just use this. Now let's run npm run build and let's see. Oh, why is it taking? Okay. Okay. So this is the bundle analyzer I was talking about. So these are the things, right? When I was telling templates. So these every chunk or the minified bundles are created through templates. So your AST will be something like index.bundle will be pointing to node modules, will be pointing to React DOM. So your templates create these things. Now let's see our Webpack post Webpack plugin, post build plugin has worked or not. If you see here, it says build successful. So it's like it has emitted that event. Like what I've done is I've taken a compiler instance, I've emitted a done event, and I've told Webpack. So whenever things are done, whenever you have finished the bundling and building, right, you just tell build is successful. So this was a very simple things. So now let's see what console of test gives, what actually stats. Stat is an object which gives you. Okay, meanwhile we can see this. So if you see here, every bundle, okay, so every chunk has a template kind of thing. So whatever architectural diagrams you see for Webpack, right, they show a very similar thing. Yeah. So if you see, Webpack gives you the stats, like when was the build started, when was the build end, and what is the hash that was generated, and it also gives you a compilation hook. So you can actually use this stats dot compilation dot options dot output dot path, if I'm not wrong. Chalk dot blue. Okay. So Webpack gives you the output path. So using this, like whenever you see a bundle analyzer or you see like any post build plugins, right, that analyze the bundle. Like I've built a simple plugin which actually analyzes the bundles in the command line interface. You don't have to install a bundle analyzer. You don't have to analyze it in HTML format, it directly analyzes the bundles in the form of graphs in your command line interface. So this is actually how it does. So what we do is we take the output path, because everyone has their own setup of outputs, right? So we take the output path and we use it. Okay. So let's assign it file path. So we have the file path, right? And I would also use fs equal to require of fs. Fs dot read directory. I will read directory and I will read the file path. Let's see what are all the files that were console log of files, files for each console log of file. For now we'll read it, but we will process something on that later. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the output directory from the Webpack. So I know from the compilation thing, like where the Webpack has emitted my files and where it has created, sorry for that, where it has created the bundles. You see, whenever I read it, right? So it generates a set of files, like what are the files? If you see the build, it has read it. It has read all the files and it has told me these are the generated bundles. So if you want to just like add a very simple bundle analyzer, I'm not showing a very complex one. I'm just going with a very basic one. So what we will do is we will require the path and fs dot stat. There are multiple ways of doing this. I'm just doing it in a simpler way to keep things very simple. Like there are many other hooks that provide you the direct information of the bundled files. File path of file, and what I will do is, as this gives a file size in bytes, I'll divide it with 1000 for now. And if I say if it is greater than 30 KB, console.chalk.read uh, file size exceeded size by 1000 and in the form of KB. Or else what I'll do is, let's just do green file let's run the build. Chalk.green. Okay.
There's a typo for green. Chalk that. Okay, now you corrected it. Okay.
I corrected it. So if you see here, right, whatever files are greater than 30 KB, it just was turned into red. Like I just did a simple analyzing of my files. If it is greater than 30 KB, I'll show it in red and I say size exceeded and this is the size. And if the file is optimal, I'll just print it in green. Similarly, you can build a lot of things. If you see this plugin which I have built here, it's though not the complete thing which I wanted to, but it's, if you see the basic thing in this, okay. You see this, I just created a post build process and I was reading the files and I used the ASCII charts to do that. to create a simple analyzer for me. You can create a lot of things on top of it. It's not like this is the only restricted thing. You can use a lot of hooks to do that. Now let's see how do we debug a hook, like how do we debug Webpack, and I think after that I'll wrap it up. So for this, I'll be using Node Nightly. It is used for debugging the Node processes, but I feel like there are many, but you can directly use Node -f inspect. But I'm more comfortable with this. Let's create a script, Node Nightly, and I will run it in inspect mode. I will read the Webpack. I need to give the exact path of the Webpack because my Node Nightly doesn't take that. Webpack bin webpack.js, and I will give a config of, okay, I'll just give this config, and I'll just put if I just want to debug this hook, so I'll just put a simple debugger. So if I run build debug, okay, uh, Chrome inspect, so I will attach this and I'll debug this. So if you see this, it has stopped at this debug point, right? I just wanted to debug the hooks, the done hook. And now if I see in the scope, these all things are in the stats. Like my compilation has all these things. It has options. It has, like as I told, right, there are other ways of building a post, like bundle analysis plugin. You have file dependencies. What are the files? You can create a dependency graph and see what it is happening. Similarly, you can actually debug any hook, and if anything breaks, you will easily understand where is exactly the error is located. And in this way, it helps in debugging your Webpack. So yeah, I think that's all I had with me. So open for questions.